Hello, Warlords. Welcome to Saga Thursday, the show all about the Skirmish miniatures game from Studio Tomahawk. I'm your host, Rodge, back with another faction review, joined by Alix. How's it going, my man?
Hey, man, it's going well. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So, yeah, you're graciously stepped up to chat about the Numidians, and you're actually all the way from New Zealand. Is that right?
That's right, man. Yeah. Bit early morning here, but that's okay.
Okay. Now, how's the Saga community down there? Do you know AJ? I think I talked with him. He's from New Zealand, if I recall
he's
correctly.
Up in Auckland, yes. So obviously a natural rival being from another city.
Nice.
We've got a pretty good scene. Locally, we've got, I don't know, maybe a dozen players come and go.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have the big cities. It has, and there's big distances between them. So quite often, if there's a national tournament, we might see a bunch of players we only see once a year. Yeah, it's a pretty strong scene.
Awesome. Glad to hear. So the Numidians are an interesting choice. I would say probably the least popular out of the Hannibal setup. You need a ton of horse flesh. That's always a barrier to many. So what drew you to the Numidians?
Well, they actually started as Carthaginians. My first Age of Hannibal army was Carthage, and I painted up sort of a point and a half of light cavalry for them with the Numidian models, Victrix. And then I started looking at the Numidian board, and I thought, this could be great fun. Mm-hmm. And Numidians have the easiest to paint horses, so I kind of committed to that, and it took me about a year, but got a whole army painted.
Okay. Yeah, you're using the Victrix Numidians?
Yeah, absolutely.
For that. Yeah, I can see that. The horses, very simple. The riders, they're wearing one piece of cloth, kind of, you know.
Yeah.
And
there's no reins, there's no saddles. It's all pretty quick.
So awesome. Yeah, I think definitely the Carthaginians have been the starter faction for many, and split into the Gauls or the Iberians, possibly, but Numidians. Looking good. Now, are you rocking any elephants with these guys?
I have some painted elephants. I occasionally use them. When I painted my models up, I did Numidian crew and Carthaginian crew, and I did magnetized, so I could put them out. So I can put a couple of elephants in my army if I want.
Awesome. Well, let's jump into the actual equipment options here. So your warlord must be mounted on a horse. You can recruit elephants, like we said. Interesting thing, no Hearthguard in the Numidian army at all. Numidian warriors are mounted on horses, equipped with javelins, and you can take some levies with javelins or no special equipment options. Oh, interesting. Again, I guess I didn't realize they could take the plain sword and board levy. Those are always pretty decent if you can take them, but a lot of times it depends on the battle board abilities and the synergies there, whether you want to take those or not.
No equipment levy. I know. It's an option I've not painted.
All right. Well, let's see. Yeah, I guess we'll see as we go along how the battle board can soup those up or possibly doesn't interact with those guys at all.
Yeah.
It's interesting. No Hearthguard. Do you find the warlord is more vulnerable because of that? What's that?
The warlord is your big hitter.
Oh, okay.
Everybody else is quite lightly armored.
Yeah, he's got the highest. Him and the elephant, I guess, are armor 5.
Yeah.
Lower against shooting, but everybody else 3 against shooting, 3 in melee for those horsemen. Ooh, that's brutal.
Yeah.
Javelins are nice. Have you gotten to play with the change in the javelins, just like in the last?
Yeah, it's actually quite beneficial for Numidians. The new cover rules and the new javelin rules are really helpful. And in fact, the new fatigue for destroyed units is quite nice as well. Although that can be quite punishing for the Numidians too if they get caught on the back foot.
Yeah. Definitely. I can definitely see that. You know, it just gives you a few more options. You know, if you start with the medium of the enemy, you can really machine gun. And then if you just want to charge in, you can still do your javelins after that as well. So it just kind of gives you more option, a little more lethality. And some folks would probably put the Numidians sort of towards the bottom of the pile, perhaps. So maybe they're clawing their way back up with some of those javelin changes. So you told me you like to run the flying circus.
That's right.
Is this just pure warriors? Is that what the circus is?
In a 6-point game, you're taking 6 points of warriors.
Now, that's kind of actually scary to look upon, because in Saga, the horses take up a little more room, and so 48 models plus the warlord. I think if the math holds there, you take up. That takes up a lot of the deployment zone. You really look like you're up against a horde. My buddy would run an all-mounted Normans list with like almost pure warriors, and it was kind of the same. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm outnumbered 4-1 here. What's going on?
Now, I would imagine that the Normans put quite big units occasionally, though, and with the circus, you want to take very small units.
Okay, so what sizes are we talking here then?
Well, I usually run as many as I can in units of 5. Wow. I'm still settling on the right balance, but I tend to go mostly units of 5. I think you get about 7 units of 5. 1 unit of 9, so I've at least got somebody who can get stuck in if I need, and I think you're left over with a unit of 4 who just runs around as well.
Okay, that's interesting. So, I mean, you're capping out at 8 Saga dice. So
yeah, you are.
They would have to.
You're on 8 Saga dice for a while.
You can lose a few. It's interesting for the opponent, because I'll do the same thing with pagan peoples, where there's oftentimes a Saga. I'll go in. At least I peel the Saga dice off you, or 1 or 2 this turn. Even though it didn't go well, but. It's kind of demoralizing when you're up against an army like this or the pagan peoples. Well, you can kill. You got to kill 2 units, and I'm still rocking 8. It's not till you get to the 3rd or the 4th one where you're impacting my Saga dice ability, and it kind of can change the way people play. Just based off that alone.
It grants the Numidians a bit of I guess, a sort of a meta ability, not a board ability, but because you've got a couple of frequently used orders, you can recycle those dice back in if you get an activation.
Okay. Yeah, 1, 2.
So you can sometimes roll 10 Saga dice in a turn.
And get it. Yeah. Get a couple rares, feed the
Rares,
orders, and then
kick them back onto the board.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, all right. Well, let's sort of dive into board, I guess.
Sure.
I always have to put this in here because there's impending facts as I'm recording this, potentially. So we're recording this sort of mid-January. So this probably isn't going to come out till a month, possibly 2 later. So there's a decent chance. We've been hearing about facts for the army books. I don't think Hannibal... Was Hannibal a fact once or not at all? I don't think it has been. Or no, I think it did.
I think it has one.
Because something happened to the Gauls, I remember.
That's right. Yeah, they got calmed down slightly, I remember. I don't think much going on with the Numidians in the facts.
Okay, I'm going to have to look that up. well,
I should too.
Yeah, and I guess you would know. You would know if the Numidians have been fact, right?
You would think I would, yes. Okay. I don't believe they have, because it's not ringing any bells with me, but I could be about to horribly embarrass myself.
Yeah, I'll just double check that. While we chat, it was fact in 2021. Iberians, Gauls, Romans, just 1 page or nothing with our Iberian friends, or Numidian friends, I should say. Okay, well, let's jump over to the battle board. So up top, it is slightly different. Without the Hearth Guards there, your first one is just the heroes, and then elephants activate with the warriors. Do the elephants activate with the warriors on other boards too?
Well, I only use them with Carthage, and then it's divided into contingent citizens.
So there's citizens with the Carthage board, right?
They sit in the same place on the board, so I think probably so. Let
me get up that Carthage board. Contingent or mercenary. Well, I think if with Carthage, they activate on all 3 dice because they're a citizen unit, I believe.
That sounds right.
So they're not activating as well as the Carthaginian elephants, and Alexander's out, and there's plenty of elephants there. I don't know where anybody's elephants are activating, so this might be special, maybe not. We got the levies, normal stuff, and activation pool and combat bonus looks to be the same. So let's pop down to that first one, Born Horsemen Orders ability. So this is one of the 2 you mentioned till the end of the turn. Whenever you activate a mounted unit to move, the move is made with 3 M rulers instead of 2, and it just takes an uncommon. That's an uncommon? Yep.
Yeah, that's an uncommon.
Uncommon die. So, yeah. Do you?
Oh, this is a great
Are you popping
ability.
this one? You want that extra medium?
This is fantastic. It just it ups your javelin threat range to 2L or I guess 4M.
Mm-hmm.
You can redeploy super easily. You can shift your whole army around. Like you can be across the table in 2 activations. This is a wonderful ability, and I will play this every time I can.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So I played the Steppe Tribes recently, or actually quite a few games with them, and they moved 3 mediums instead of 2, and yeah, that's awesome. You can get anywhere, with three medium rulers, and with the javelin you can shoot kind of 24 inches, which on a Saga battlefield is absolutely huge. So that was one of the best things I loved about using them. So having your entire army do that, I think, is awesome. When we're thinking about your strategy here, just in general, are you kind of just going in to shoot and then run away? Is that generally the kind of the plan?
It depends a bit on the scenario, but I will often pick the enemy unit that I like the least, and you will find half my army swarms up to it, throws a bunch of javelins, and then disappears 3M back again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's awesome. If that's an infantry unit, they're not going to catch them. If it's a cav, adds an extra activation in there.
Usually enemy cavalry will need to be fatiguing themselves to catch up with you, and that's kind of okay. If they're going to fatigue themselves to catch one of your little 5-man units, they'll have a fatigue from that. They usually have a fatigue from combat. So they're stuck out away from their friends, and they're getting exhausted.
They're in the middle,
surrounded by all your javelin men, and it's good times.
They're in the middle of your battle line, and they're not going to be getting away. So that's all right. Like we said, you can definitely afford to lose a unit or 2. So this one's cool. I guess to be clear, it sounds like this is purely movement and
it is purely movement.
Charge.
The way it's worded, I don't think it works with charges. Charges are still just an L.
Okay. Yep. So that sounds good to me. So sounds like one you're using probably.
I would play this every turn.
Mm-hmm. That's great. All right. Next up is Trap. Activation ability using a common. Choose an enemy unit and a friendly unit within medium of each other. The enemy unit must activate for a move of short. It must approach your unit as much as possible. So it seems pretty easy to set up because you're going to be within medium before you chuck your javelins. So I don't know, are you using it? This is...
I love this ability.
So how does this play out?
At first glance, obviously it's pretty handy for dragging enemy out of cover, right? Because, of course, it's a bit hard for cavalry to go into cover. And with the new rules, you only need one guy out, or partially out, for the unit to lose cover.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's nice, baby.
Yeah. But that's the first glance, right? It's actually really good fun for throwing enemy into cover. And I had the specific joy in a game recently of forcing a unit of enemy Hearthguard to run into a swamp.
Ooh. That's awesome.
Yeah, it is. It is wonderful. Because it's going to take them a lot of activations to get rid of the 2 fatigues they pick up. Then they've got to drag themselves out of the swamp. Mm-hmm. And they've got to get away so you don't throw them in again the next turn. It's a delight. It can really mess with the enemy. It's also great from separating a warlord from his bodyguard.
Oh yeah, yeah. Either the
Yeah,
warlord or the
from poking
bodyguards.
holes in enemy lines. If you need to get through, you can drag a unit off to one side.
That's cool. Yeah. So on
Now,
paper, doesn't seem like it do
it's a
much,
really
but
really handy ability. Even if you just use it to make an enemy move closer, so your second rank of javelins is in range. Yeah, it's a really handy. And for a common, it's great.
yeah, that's right. And we kind of mentioned the javelin change and just starting within medium. So just having one unit move up, pull a unit back into range for the other guys to do 2 or 3 shots is great. Yeah. Awesome ability. Not very many abilities that can force the opponent to move like this. There isn't really any conditions or options. They got to do it. So
They got to do it. Yeah.
That's cool.
And they must move towards your closest mini. So you can actually have quite a degree of precision if you need to.
Okay. I like the sound of that.
Yeah. It's a wonderful ability, that one. I love it.
Well, let's pop down to support. This is a common or rare, it seems. Melee. Gain 2 defense dice, or 4 if you used a rare. If your unit is within medium of another friendly, non-mercenary infantry unit. So that is basically levy. You can reroll.
Or the elephants.
Or the elephants. Are they count as infantry?
They're I believe so.
Yeah, I think they might.
They're not mounted
somewhere
so
in there.
I believe they count as an infantry unit.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised by that. We roll defense dice of 1. So, but you're not bothering with any of those, so you're not worried about that.
I'm very unlikely to use this.
Frankly, that's not really that great. Re-rolling defense rolls of 1. You wouldn't turn it down, but
2 defense dice for a common is okay, I guess. I probably wouldn't be using a rare here, and I've almost never got infantry on the table anyway. So my cavalry are whisking around the table at full speed. They're not wanting to be sitting still, following along with some infantry. Yeah,
I agree.
But again, the elephant, maybe if you've got 2 elephants side by side, that could be handy.
That could be handy. The defense dice are better the fewer hits you're going to take. So an elephant, if it's taking 2 hits and you're rolling 4 defense dice, that's pretty good. If your horsemen are taking 9 hits and you're rolling 11 defense dice, it's not going to really swing the combat one way or the other the way that it could.
Interesting. And the times that I put an elephant on the table, it's a maybe.
Okay. So it sounds like your warriors are pretty expendable there, and you're probably not going to be using the die here to try and save a couple.
With armor of 3 and 3, you have to get used to occasionally units disappear.
Just picking whole units up off the table. Awesome. All right, next down we have Exhausting Battle. Activation reaction for a common die. Trigger this after an enemy unit within short of one of your mounted units is activated, but before the activation is resolved. The enemy unit must choose between suffering a fatigue or canceling their activation. So I'm trying to picture the sequence of events here. So this could be used if you start within short, or if they're trying to kind of hunt you down, they'll have to take a break over short away if they don't want to trigger this. I guess, yeah. How are you using this one? Are you using it?
I use it very rarely, is probably the answer.
Okay.
I have used it... I've used it to frustrate a warlord who was exhausted and wanted to rest. He either had to cancel that or take a fatigue. So if he completed his activation, he'd take a fatigue again and become exhausted. That was quite entertaining. You can use it if you have positioned somebody to throw an enemy Hearthguard into a swamp. You could leave them there and then make life even more difficult for them. So,
Sure.
But it's usually not sufficient to stop a unit getting charged or run over. Somebody's just going to take a fatigue and fail into you. And they're within needs. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's got some pretty specific limitation to it, and they can just cancel it,
It's quite situational. Yeah.
So in the early game...
But it's a common.
you're basically just going to trade a die with your opponent. But I think, like you said, with Warlords and some of the late game math of how things work out, and there's generally not enough dice to just overload your activations necessarily. You could definitely...
If you've watched your opponent very carefully piece together a set of moves with every activation being important, then this can make them throw their dice.
You can kind of force them to throw an extra activation up there to overcome this, and then
that's right.
You can choose to pop it or leave it on. Do the mind game there. But okay, kind of specific ability there could be useful, but for the most of the game, you're not putting your dice here. Where are the dice going, Alix? Incapacitating shot is up next. Is this where it's going? Shooting, uncommon. Reroll all your attack dice, which roll 1 or 2s. If your unit inflicts at least 3 casualties, that's actually a pretty tall order there. Target suffers a fatigue after the shooting attack is resolved. So if you're using a few small units, you're not getting as good a bang for your buck as if you're rolling 6 or 8 dice.
Usually we're throwing 4 dice with a circus attack, because you've got units of 5 running around. You can get bonuses, you can extra attacks, and usually you're 3 or 4. So causing 3 casualties probably. The biggest limiter is it's an uncommon, and this is probably about the 5th place in line I'd look at putting an uncommon on the board.
Okay, interesting. So we haven't really... Yeah. So Born Horseman was an uncommon. That's the 3 moves.
Yeah, there's a couple more coming up.
So on the second half here, we will be looking at the uncommons. That's interesting that there's such a competition for those uncommons.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I agree.
You love to see the horses rolled up when you're playing. That's what you want to see. Numidians and their horses.
So if you get a bunch of uncommons, put it here. Causing 3 casualties. That's pretty tall order. If it happens, you're not going to turn it down. If you have
taken levy javelins, maybe that's going to fly.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're using 2 uncommon activations to get your levy up, and then use this as their shooting attack, and it's getting expensive.
Mm-hmm. I agree. All right, we'll find something. We'll find something to spend your die on here. Halali. Here, this is got to be one. Uncommon orders till the end of your turns. Your non-mercenary units generating 4 or less attack dice during a shooting attack gain 1 bonus attack die. So 4 or less. You can't have... I was just talking about a big unit of shooters, but you kind of don't want that because you just want to, maximize your little chippers there.
Little units of 5 warriors running around. They generate 3 attack dice. They get a bonus one from Halali, and you're getting 4 shots from 5 models, which is great.
Okay. Yeah, that's not too shabby. That definitely adds up. So again, I'm kind of thinking Pagan Peoples again. With the minimum units, they generate 2 shots, but there's a 1 ability that adds 2 attack and dice and shooting and melee. So once they go to 4, and you're on like your 3rd or 4th shooting attack at 4 dice, your opponent is like, okay, I'm ready for this to be done. So not bad. A fair ability here.
No, it's not bad. Usually I'll have 5, maybe 6 javelin attacks a turn if you're getting... Because remember, you've got about 10 units running around, 9 or 10 units. You can usually get half into attack each turn and half are resting. Mm-hmm. So you maybe get 5 extra attack dice from a uncommon, which is quite nice.
Yeah, that's not too shabby. And especially if you're going to cash this one in and use a rare to reroll with activation pool, get some more dice. I think that's a decent use of the ability. All right, next up, Skirmish. 2 horses.
Yes.
Okay, so this has to be horse number 1 and horse number 2. Is where you spend them for your turn. Activate all your mounted units for a move. So this is amazing. I was kind of waiting for something like this to pop up here, so I'm not surprised. Yeah, this has to be an every turn ability, maximized.
If you can, for sure. Yeah.
Sometimes you do get kind of skunked on those uncommons. So sad face.
That's not a disaster. If you've not rolled uncommons, then you've probably rolled commons or rares. So you must have them. And the commons allow you to activate a unit of warriors. So you're never going to be particularly crippled.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's kind of a good point on those turns. So if you play warrior heavy force, there will be a turn once every 3 or 4 games where you roll nothing but uncommons on a key turn. So at least you're still doing something.
Yeah. But then you get to use incapacitating shot. So great.
That's when that's when it's coming out here.
It is limiting, and it's only an activate to move, which is fine. It would be nice if you could rest or charge or something, but you're activating all of your units. There's no cap to it. So it's your warlord, it's all of your warrior units. Everyone's just up and away.
Mm-hmm. This is awesome. Yeah, so this is what makes kind of the hit and run, or kind of shoot and run possible, because it's pretty intensive if you don't have battle board abilities supporting you to move up, shoot for free, but then you move back, but then you have a fatigue, so you got to rest. So it's kind of like a 3 dice investment for one shooting attack for those hit and run. So at least with this cuts down, so it's just a two die investment, either on the way there or the way back. So yeah, this is what I tend
to split in half, and I will have half running forward to throw javelins and half either coming back or redeploying and either resting or getting rid of the fatigue they picked up from the previous turn.
Just hanging out. Awesome.
Yeah. Now, the other neat thing about this is if you're playing with units of 5, eventually you'll have a couple of units of 1 or 2 guys, right? As they
so you can still
activate.
Yeah, them. You wouldn't normally bother.
So if you want to send off a single warrior model to stand somewhere annoying to set up a trap, for example, you can do that. You can sacrifice that guy to really mess with the enemy, or just start positioning them somewhere annoying, even if you just want to block enemy maneuvers.
Yeah, he's the one. He's the one going into the swamp to set up the trap for the other guys to pull them in. That's perfect.
Yeah,
awesome.
You do have to be a bit careful about accidentally fatiguing your guys. If you've moved somebody first, then you have to activate it.
Sure, yes, that's a very good point for all you newbies out there. It's all of them, so you got to be careful about the sequencing of everything that you do. Right. You got to make sure you get your rests in first, because nobody's resting after you pop this ability.
And if you've done a maneuver, then you have to activate again. And sure, you get a good move, but you have just fatigued you. Mm-hmm. I still find myself forgetting that the warlord needs to do this. So I'll put him somewhere sensible and then have to move him again.
Just give him an extra fatigue for no reason. That's no good. All right. Let's go down.
A great ability. I mean, this Halali and Born Horsemen is that's what the Flying Circus is all about. It's just these swarms of small units, tumbling around the battlefield doing whatever they want.
I can see between those 3, it's kind of enough going on there that if nothing else is working, that's still a good kind of fundamental use of the dice. But it is 1, 2, 3, 4 uncommons each time.
It is
to get all 3 of them.
So if you're rolling 8 dice, which often you can, again with the Circus build, you can usually expect a rare, if you're lucky, maybe 2, and usually a couple or 3 uncommons if you're having pretty average rolls. And I will often load up Skirmish first, or one of the orders, and then recycle that back in with the activation pool and try and load up the other ones.
Okay.
It depends a bit on each turn what I want to do, but if you use Born Horsemen and Halali, you can recycle those dice back in. You end up rolling about 10 dice per turn. You can usually get most things you want locked in.
Yeah, I think it's probably right on the cusp there, Definitely 9 dice, gets you 3, and then
it's not guaranteed. I'll tell you
2, 2 out of 6 chance, or
Yeah.
4 out of 6 if you roll 2 dice to get that fourth one. So if you can only do Halali or Born Horseman, I guess which one's more important to you between those two? Obviously, they'll be kind of bored.
It depends a lot on what I need to do that turn. If I really just need to make people dead, then probably Halali. If I'm trying to get myself back under control or reorganized or take an objective or something, maybe Born Horseman to get the distance in and get everyone safe.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move down to the Stampede here. Common die melee, gain 2 attack dice for each of the enemy units' fatigues. So I don't know if there's any abilities after this that put fatigue on them, but could be good. I mean, if they're exhausted,
I like
6.
This
use
is the melee ability I'll use the most.
Yeah, if they just have 1 fatigue, will you still use it? Or okay.
Yeah. It's hard work getting extra attack dice on this board. There's not much that helps you out in combat. Well, obviously, with the shooting, you get the bonus, but in actual combat, there's not much.
Mm-hmm.
But remember, if you're being pursued by an enemy cavalry unit and they've put a fatigue on themselves, they've picked up a fatigue from a combat with one of your units, then you're getting +4 dice there.
Yeah, it's kind of like a defensive play almost in those situations. They're coming in on their turn, but they got to know that if they go in with 2, you're going to have probably 9 attack dice from that little 5-pack, or even more from one of your bigger units. So, yeah, that's a good point.
It's very handy on the counterattack against cavalry, who of course can't close ranks, so you get your javelins. It's nice.
Mm-hmm. All right. Hail of Missiles up next.
Yeah.
Any old die will do here. Activate one of your units for a shooting attack. That gets 2 bonus attack dice. If you inflict at least 1 casualty, much more manageable than 3, cancel all the Wait, what is this? Gotta cancel all the casualties and inflict the fatigue on them instead. Why would you do that? If you use a rare and would have caused at least 2, inflict 2. Okay. You get 2 bonus attack dice, but you're just going to cancel them all to put a fatigue on them.
Well, you've summarized my thoughts there quite nicely, which is why would you do this?
Okay, yeah, just as I was going along there.
Yeah.
A rare, theoretically, 2 fatigue. I don't know.
I don't know when you'd do this.
Yeah, because
it's no use against units with resilience, because the casualties would be putting fatigue on you.
Same deal, yeah. Really, it's kind of setting up a melee.
Resilience. We like fighting them because lots of little javelin attacks slowly builds up that fatigue, and then you just finish them off. But I can't work out. I've never used this ability, and I don't know if I'm missing something. But
let me see if I'm thinking about it.
I don't know when you would.
Yeah. So the thing is, too, you got your free javelin shot, so you're going to take that first. So because you're not going to activate to shoot when you could just shoot for free. So this is going to be kind of something that's going to put a fatigue
yourself
on yourself.
If this is a second activation.
Yeah.
Because it's not the free javelin attack, so you've got to move up, activate to shoot, take a fatigue.
Yeah. So this would be if you really need to exhaust the enemy unit. So the exhaustion with the -1 to hit, is kind of like tipping the scales, 2 times over, potentially. I don't.
I feel if I needed to put fatigue on the enemy, I would be using Fascinating Shot here.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe spending the dice on combat bonus to increase the odds of putting fatigue on that way.
Yeah, you could just do that instead.
Rather than putting the dice on Hail of Missiles, which I spent some time thinking about this one. The only real situation I could find a use for it would be with an elephant, maybe.
Okay, that's where my train of thought was going, because the elephants are decent, but they need a little something else from the battle board to kind of keep them alive. So if you are going to charge in with your elephant, putting a fatigue on the enemy to make them hit you on 6s could be worth it, to keep the elephant alive. Or if you're going to pop them too exhausted with the elephant, that just takes one die and they can't even hit the elephant. So it's really kind of an elephant play, kind of like you're saying. So, that's unfortunate.
I'm a bit mean, and if I want to put a fatigue on an enemy unit before an elephant charges in, or my big unit charges in, I'll just throw another unit of warriors in there. I'll put them in a fight. They'll come out at the end with a fatigue anyway.
It's guaranteed too, to work versus you might do all this and it might still not work. And and just to clarify, it definitely does not combo with incapacitating shot. You can reroll ones and twos, but you have to inflict 3 casualties with incapacitating shot, so it's not.
Yeah, and you've cancelled all your casualties.
You're getting zero. Zero
casualties.
So, if they... That's it. They could change the wording a bit, make it hits or something. There's a world where these two could interact, but it's not the one that we currently live in.
Sadly not. I don't think I've ever used this ability. I can't get my head around it.
Yeah. Well, you have to chime in below if you play Numidians and you've gotten it to work. I'm sure there's a situation out there where it probably makes sense, but we can't think of it. And Alix, you have to come back. Shoot me that email when you're like, Rodge, I did it. It worked.
When I have the epiphany, I'll message you.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, we just got the last one here, Relentlessness. This is a rare melee. Your opponent must reroll all their defense dice that score a 6. So your opponent's probably blocking on 5s. So this is kind of reroll in half.
Yeah.
Not bad, but is it worth a rare to do that?
If I've played somebody, if they've maybe left their warlord unattended somewhere, and he's mounted so he can't close ranks, and you possibly just want to throw a couple of little warrior torpedoes at him, this can be handy. It's going to halve his saves.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah,
kind of seeing it paying off. I don't know. I'm a little dubious on any ability that involves a 6, roll like a 6, whether for pro or con, me getting the 6 or my opponent getting the 6. So there is one on the Saxon board.
Put my rares in activation pool.
Yeah, I can't. If you rolled all your rares, you activated everything, you got all your dice, and you still have rares, and you're going to do a melee attack.
Sometimes, even then, if I have rares left over, sometimes I will just leave one on activation pool.
Ooh, yeah. That's been my play this last year, leaving rares on activation pool for future turns. So I agree. I would almost leave that rare up in activation pool for next time, then try to get use out of it. I mean, because you think about it, your small warrior units are going to be getting whatever, 4 dice, 3 dice, 5 dice. You're going to hit
on a shoot or a charge.
A charge.
Charge, you get 5 because they're warriors, so they get all their aggression one.
Plus 1 to hit, is good against the right, but still probably 3-4 hits. Yeah, they might roll
it would be great
6
if you're doing an awful lot of hits, but there's not a lot here that lets you do an awful lot of hits.
Yeah, you'd have to take a big 12 warrior pack or something to kind of just throw them in there. So yeah, it's not really in line with what you're doing. I think definitely with my pagan peoples, I do like having one big, huge warrior pack in addition to the small ones. I think with the Numidians, that could be something as well, because sometimes, if the Stampede, Halali, you don't get the dice there. You still got this big unit that can have an impact just with your common dice. So
I usually have a unit of 9.
Okay, yeah, that's getting close.
Yeah, I find more than that they tend to be targeted a lot by the enemy.
Sure,
and they're pretty squishy. So
yeah, they don't know. That makes sense. Yeah, you got all these little units. What do I go after? I'll just go after the big one.
I feel bad for the warbands that are able to put together combinations of single big hits, and there's just 5 guys standing there.
All right. Well, we have made it through the board. Interesting journey, to say the least. Okay, so, objective play, you're probably having a tough go of it. So a mounted playbook is kind of wait till the end and grab them. So you can definitely do that. But if you're shooting focused, grabbing them at the end can be tricky. I don't know. So like, feasting and pillaging, how do you do in that one?
It depends on the number of the objectives. Born Horseman often lets you get there first. So if it's objectives you can pick up and take, that can be quite handy. Mm-hmm. Because again, with Skirmish, you're activating everybody every turn, so you're always able to fall back.
Just kind of plunking them back, getting other units in the way to block.
Use your commons to rest as you go. So, that's an option.
Okay, that's a good point.
If you happen to be second player going second time, and you want to in the last turn again use Born Horseman and Skirmish to just throw somebody at all of the objectives and contest them, that can be quite good. If an enemy unit is so foolish as to pick up an objective, they become your target of the turn and javelin them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, objectives aren't too bad. We often run into trouble with high terrain boards. That's probably the biggest issue.
Sure, yeah. There's nothing in here. Trap is definitely good and kind of helps you work around it, but you're still generally not throwing your horsemen in there.
No.
Some
boards. Nice. You can just invite the Cretan archers out to come and talk to you. That's quite nice.
Mm-hmm. Some of the cav boards kind of have abilities which kind of allow their horsemen to go into the forest, kind of surprise folks, but definitely nothing here with the Numidians.
No.
So are these guys fun to play for you? How would you rate them up there?
They are very fun to play. I'm not sure how much fun they are to play against.
Okay.
And I'm not convinced I would take these to a tournament. Not because I think they're not competitive, but I think that's just asking to annoy 5 other players. and both people having fun is a big part of playing as toy soldiers, right? So I use these socially. People know what they're getting into, and they are great fun. They're fairly unique in Saga. I mean, most other armies are some form of battering each other in the face in formed lines or something like that, or cunning little battles. These guys are just maneuver, just running all over the table all the time, just pissing you off.
Yeah. So if we look at some of the other mounted factions out there, a lot of the times there are quite a few. Even if they're shooting, there's melee abilities to kind of bring them back.
Yeah.
And get you to play and kind of go head to head. But the Numidians, the few abilities,
there's not much combat ability.
They're fine. They're not. Yeah. They're not enough to entice you. You're like, well, I'm just gonna shoot and run away again. So, these guys are pretty unique. I think.
They're almost extreme Mongols. But the Mongols have a bit of hitting power when they need it.
Yes. So there's movement on those other boards. But they bring it back. They still bring it back to melee, and I think, that's interesting. If they can catch you, they're going to have a good time, just wiping out your units. But if they can't, you definitely have the moves there to really fluster just an infantry, your Viking army, kind of some of your Age of Viking classic forces. If we're doing some cross age play, how do you think they stack up in the Hannibal Alexander experience, if you're going to limit yourself to those factions?
I find them pretty competitive. I think they're good. Certainly, the opponent usually has to have a couple of games to get the head around what's going on, because they're an entirely different style of army to play against. But they can take on pretty much anyone, mostly by not actually taking them on. Like just poking holes and running away. I found Macedonians to be a tough opponent because they have a lot of abilities that allow solid hits, but also moving without fatigue. So they can, if they pursue you.
Okay. Yep.
And there's Age of Alexander mercenaries who are quite scary. I think the Illyrians who get bonuses against light armored enemy. And
no good.
they can be quite unpleasant. But you can stay out of range of enemy shooting. You can usually avoid big punchy units. So the fights are usually on your terms, unless something's gone a bit wrong and you found yourself on the back foot.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
The problem is there's just no real big punch. There's no way to just really eliminate a unit if you need to.
Yeah, as we look through there, you can't even really get a big shoot or a big melee. It's
just chipping away.
Attrition, yeah. So those attrition fights, sometimes they lose guys faster than you.
Pretty solid. He can get in there and I'm quite happy to use him to finish off units that I've chipped a few bits off. Mm-hmm. Unit of 9 warriors with javelins, they can terrify other cavalry units or levy units. Mm-hmm. You just need to thin them out a bit first. So don't be tempted to go to combat in your first 2 or 3 turns. Get in position. Start annoying you. Start throwing the half guard and
taking
swamps,
them down. Yeah. Charge into 4 packs of enemy warriors, not 8 packs, and you have a couple guys alive at the end.
And there's nothing wrong if you need to. If you've got a damaged unit or 1 or 2 warriors, just throw them to the enemy. Put some fatigue on and annoy them. Just slow them down.
Sounds good. Yeah, if you can maximize Stampede, that one's actually pretty decent. If you can get the three fatigues on them.
Yeah.
All right. So Numidians, fun times. If you got a Carthage warband, you're halfway there. And have you just run the Carthage board? I gotta with your Numidian horse because you can take
I've
an entire contingent. Army.
I've not tried it. I have read about that as a great way to play Numidians, is just to play Carthage with lots of Numidians.
Yeah, so there's a multi-activation on that board. There's a couple of really good abilities and synergies. There's going to be a couple dead abilities if you're just taking pure contingents for the most part. But you could take the elephants again. I think there's probably easier to keep the elephants alive on that board. So you do have a 2-for-1 if you build a Numidian force from scratch. So you'll have to.
I think if you take them with the Carthage board, you've got a more sensible Numidian army. If you take them with the Numidian, extreme Numidian.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, awesome. Well, thanks for stepping up, sharing your knowledge with us today. I definitely appreciate it, and it's kind of cool to hear about. Usually, after a battle board review, I'm like, I think I know what we'll be purchasing next, but with these Numidians, I'm not sure about this one. It's the horse bodies.
You've got to commit. They're an investment in the play style. You've kind of got to be committed to. I love light cavalry. When I play various games, I get the light cavalry out of cavalry archers around. I think they're fun. But, if you want to stand up fight, these aren't the warband for you.
Yeah, I think if you're doing a mounted warband, this could be the one to do because we mentioned they paint up so quick. I've seen multiple just Numidian hordes out there. Just purely the Victrix, whatever, 3, 4 of those kits. I can't remember how many you get from each little bag.
You want 4. We'll give you 6 points of warriors, 4 bags. And then I pinched a model, I think, again from my leftover Carthaginians to kit bash a warlord.
Somewhere for the warlord, and because get your little assembly line going, get your speed paints or your dips or whatever you're gonna do. And
last year I committed to painting at least 1 point every month, and that got me through a couple of warbands. That was pretty good.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I'll have to circle back around on that. That sounds like probably a Saga Thursday army building challenge at some point here. You might have just planted the seed, my friend. That's a good idea. Awesome.
You should have a look at the Saga Facebook group. There was point per month for 2022, and it was a lot of people got on board. It was great fun.
Okay, yeah, I think is that the Hirschau, the Germans, or
yes, there was that as well. I think that ran for about half the year. There was a lot of overlap there. I just would put up a post every month. What are you painting? What are you going to paint? How's it going?
That's a good point.
You just encourage people along with their painting. It's great.
1 point a month, you're done in 6 months.
I think I
Low
got,
pressure.
if you count a warlord as a point, I got 24 points died.
7. Wow. Okay. Awesome.
23.
Wow. All righty. Wow. Thanks once again. I don't know what other factions you're playing here, but you're always welcome to come back. Share your knowledge. And
The other faction I'll be playing the most is Pagan Russ, who are just the opposite of these guys.
oh yeah. That's pretty much the most opposite force you could probably find. So it's fun.
Look, thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Yeah. All right, folks. If you've been following along, you'll know that I can't do this without the patrons out there. So thanks to Terry, Patrick, Sean, Mitchell, Kevin, and Scott. And couldn't do it without you guys. And if you play the Numidians or played against them, have any additional insights, comment below. And I'd be curious to hear if all warriors is the way to go. If 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 elephants, maybe the way to, I don't know. I don't think there's a limit, is there? Could you take 6?
I think you can have half your army of elephants.
Half your army, okay. 3 elephants. Is that the way to go? I don't know. They got the no special equipment levy in there. And those guys are decent by themselves. I don't know. Maybe sneak them in somehow. But
they just forgot to bring a horse.
That's their problem. If anybody is using those other troops, I'd be curious to see if there's something we're missing here about those other troop types. And thanks for watching, folks. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye. Saga! If you'd like to see more Saga content, consider joining the Heathen Army over on Patreon or popping on down to the Saga Thursday Discord server. Links below. Thanks, guys.